The Kansas City Chiefs are officially on the clock at pick 63. And then shortly after that, pick 66. What's up, everybody? Kent Swanson here with Matthew Lane and also Joshua Briscoe hanging out with us today. We are awaiting the announcement of the Kansas City Chiefs selection at pick 63. They don't make a move up. They don't go, they don't get aggressive and try to go, target somebody. They sit back. They're keeping their assets. They're holding their picks. And now they've got 2 picks in the next 4 selections to help make this team better. And Matty Lane, I really like how this board is sitting.
Yeah, I like some of the players. I think some players right before the Chiefs came on the board in the past 5 to 7 picks. I was a little disappointing that they came off the board, but when we're still looking at it here, we have players that are valued in this general area that we think are great fits for the Chiefs. There's players at various positions across the board, whether you want defensive help, offensive help. So I think it's sitting in a pretty good spot. I guess we can just run through some of our favorite fits here. If I'm looking through kind of our boards, let's start with Alec Eomanor, Stanford wide receiver, right? We think he kind of fits what the Chiefs might want on that side of the ball. If they're looking for an outside X wide receiver, how would you feel of a pick like him coming in at this spot?
Yeah, I think that would be, you've talked about the prototype player that the Chiefs prefer at the X receiver. And I think Alec Eomanor from a physical standpoint would make some sense over there at the receiver spot. I point to the cornerback position. I think there's still some intriguing talents there at the corner spot too, right? You've got Savon Ravel out of Eastern Carolina University, tremendous ball skills, a playmaker at the outside corner position. At one point was considered a top 20 selection, but there's some concerns about the medical. That's another position that I think I would be interested in. We've been paying attention to the cornerback spot as this has been going, and there's a couple of other interesting targets there. Edge as well, defensive line, Matty.
Yeah, there's even beyond edge, Landon Jackson, a defensive end out of Arkansas. Probably my favorite pick right now, if I had to throw him, would be Darius Alexander, defensive tackle out of Toledo. I know we're dealing with a little bit of an age gap here, but that's fine. You're late second round. I don't care if my 24-year-old defensive tackle who can play on day one because he's physically mature. That doesn't bother me anymore at this point in time in the NFL. We've seen the Rams build their entire team off of just that and have success, right? So he might be my favorite pick that's still available right now. If you want to take a Savon Ravel that you mentioned, because the talent is just so high there. There's a lot of guys that I think make a lot of sense for the Chiefs here. So I'm hoping one of the names that we've mentioned are what they say, so I don't have to be sad on the inside, Kent.
Yeah, I think there's there's several routes I think I would be comfortable with the Chiefs taking. I think there's some talent at multiple positions. It's just a matter of how they want to try to navigate this board, right?
Yeah.
And they've got 2 selections in the next 4. Joshua Briscoe, quick question for you out of curiosity. What direction, positionally, would you like the Chiefs to go?
I think defensive line here. Defensive line was kind of my hope in the first round. I like Walter Nolan. I like Derek Harmon. Obviously, they went well before the Chiefs could have been on the clock, and it would have been a big trade up for Harmon. So I'm happy with the Simmons pick. The trenches on the defensive side right now are my preference. And man, I'd love to give you good news here, but the Chiefs are taking some time right now in the war room.
I've seen a couple people saying that there's a name out there that I've been paying attention to. I am not sure not going there.
There are a bunch. I have all 3 of the accounts you've been looking at tonight. None of them have it yet officially. So yeah, I'm not ready to pull the trigger just yet.
I'm not ready to get there yet either. And candidly, if it was the selection, Matty, I'll tell you what it is later.
Oh boy.
What?
I hope it's not.
I think I've seen the one you saw, and that's going to be a very unfortunate follow-up to this.
If that is the case.
Yeah, it is. I think I just based on how you're acting, I'm pretty sure. If that's it, that'll be very sad.
Yeah, we'll wait to see. We'll wait to see if that's actually real. I think some people are saying it, but I'm not sure if that is the selection. It would be a defensive tackle, and I think there's some other defensive tackles I would prefer outside of that.
A lot of defensive tackles.
There's a lot of defensive tackles that I would prefer outside of that. But that's okay.
What's the D-line board look like for you guys right now? Is there a defensive tackle who you're holding your breath for?
Darius Alexander.
I want Darius Alexander.
The Toledo defensive tackle would be tremendous.
Yeah. CJ West would be next on my list out of Indiana. We saw him absolutely dominant at the East-West Shrine game, so that was a fun one. I know the Chiefs have had some interest, with some virtual meetings with Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. Not my favorite defensive tackle, but I would understand it because there's a lot of physical ability there. It's those would probably be my top 3 right now if I had to guess on them. And the name that Ken is talking about is not one of those 3.
So we'll find out. Like there's been some circulation here of a selection, and I've not seen a credible source have it yet.
The main I would say 3 accounts who have been tipping the picks before they've landed have not made any statements yet regarding the Chiefs pick. It doesn't say the pick is in yet on TV, so I am treading water over here. I'll let you know as soon as I got it.
There is several players that, like, if you told me the Chiefs selected, I'd be thrilled with. There really is. Like, I really like how this board is sitting for the Chiefs. It's just a matter of what they think, and they're going to have more intel on several of these, some of the criteria outside of just what we're kind of paying attention to a little bit, just from the outside looking in. There's the film evaluation piece of it, but then there's also, there's the medical, there's the character, there's those kind of things that you have to tap into that's going to change how these boards are going to sit for other teams.
They're also presumably not moving up and picking again after the Eagles and Giants.
Listen, I guess at this point in time, we kind of like tease it a little bit. The name that I think is seeing circulate, and it makes sense because the Chiefs have had this guy on a top 30 visit, is Omar Norman-Lott, a defensive tackle from Tennessee. I think a lot of people really like him. I just don't think he's our favorite defensive tackle. I think it would be unfair of us to mention all these other players and not mention his name, because that is the one that is, we've seen the pick is officially in on the tracker right now. So we are now just waiting for it to be confirmed from one of the accounts that we have been pulling from, or for it to show up on the TV either way.
Yep.
Is there a position that you guys would not like to see here? Not a player, but a position?
Interior offensive line.
Punter.
Yeah, punter would be bad.
I think interior offensive line would still be something I would not want to see the Chiefs select.
Here, yeah.
Guard would make me mad. Running back would make me question the process. I would be curious about why that had to be that guy just here.
Yeah. Oh, hey, they're about to announce it. They're just going to announce it.
I don't have it anywhere else. Is that Dante Hall up there?
So we're just going to watch it with you guys on the selection on the TV.
With the 63rd overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Chiefs select defensive tackle Omar Norman-Lott, Tennessee.
So this is a player that the Chiefs had in for a top 30 visit. This is interior rusher, a guy that kind of played in a rotational role for Tennessee.
Kind of.
He played in a rotational role. He wasn't a full-time player for them. But he's an interior rusher that's going to give you some juice, in the pass rush from that perspective. I think if you're pointing to why the Chiefs might be looking to grab a player like Omar Norman-Lott, you're looking at what they've had previously with Tershawn Wharton over the last few seasons. They want a guy that can rush from the interior, that might be a more of a sub rush type player. This is what Omar Norman-Lott is. And what he was a part-time player for the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the good for Omar Norman-Lott, he had one of the best pass rush win rates according to Pro Football Focus. He almost set records for them in terms of how effective he was as a pass rusher. He was constantly beating blocks. He was, he had 27 pressures on the year on a very limited amount, only 139 pass rush reps. He was a pass rush specialist. He didn't play against the run at all. He came on. He was a pass rusher for a good Tennessee Volunteers defense, and he did it a lot from the interior. I think you see the athleticism, the lateral agility kind of pops off the field for him a little bit. I just, when I watched him, I wasn't quite as high on him as a lot of other people. Even looking for the flashes and stuff like that, it looked more to me like a guy that was fresh because he played such a limited amount of snaps, more so than a guy that was overly skilled or athletic. But it's hard to argue with the production. It's hard to argue with the numbers. And this is a guy, he transferred to Tennessee from Arizona State after 3 years where he was similar, a pass rush specialist for them, goes to Tennessee, continues that role for the Volunteers. And he's a guy that Chiefs brought in. They have this 30 visit. I know there were some injury concerns because he wasn't able to do a full workout, I believe, at the combine. They must have cleared him medically. They bring him in to kind of replace Tershawn Wharton and play as this interior pass rush specialist, presumably for them over the next couple seasons.
That it seems like a direct replacement to Tershawn Wharton is really what it kind of feels like. This is they really appreciated what they've had at Tershawn Wharton, which is a player that kind of exceeded what they normally do with their interior defensive linemen. He was just an undeniable player for them, as a quick win, speedy interior rusher. And they just said, we really liked what we've had with him over the last few years. And we feel like we want to continue to get that type of player here into the mix. And so they go grab one of those interior defensive linemen that is kind of a sub package player. But, they're hoping to just continue to add juice along that defensive line.
Our guy Zach Eisen had the interior defensive line over in the KCSN Draft Guide. Why a 4th-round grade here? Is he picking up where Tershawn Wharton left off? Is this a developmental process going to look like Wharton's, who is an undrafted free agent and obviously made his money this offseason?
Well, I think when we're looking at guys like like just the defensive linemen in general, like I think you're wanting to see them check a lot of boxes, to warrant being, for us, probably a little bit outside of a top 100 pick. But when you're looking for, what you're looking for with some of these guys is, okay, how many downs are they going to play? Are you going to be a 3-down? Are you going to be a 3-down player? Are you going to be a 2-down player? Those are things that when you're basing your initial evaluations off of, like stuff, how are you going to play against the run? Some of those kind of questions, those weren't answered for us as consistently when you put on Omar Norman-Lott's tape. And that's pretty prevalent with, what he was asked to do at Tennessee. Candidly, he wasn't really asked to be an early down run defender or an early down or every down defender. They kind of kept him limited to a small sample size of snaps.
And he was good. And he was good when he was asked to play. And I think that's what we got to keep falling back on, right? The upside is it's in the production profile. I've seen a lot of people they put out the highlights and stuff of him as a pass rusher. You show his best plays. And I think defensive coaching staffs, defensive line coaches can see it and be like, oh, I think I can get this consistently. Or even if I only get this for 40% of the plays, this matters. And it's just, I do struggle. I mean, I struggle to see where he definitely wins. I don't see the trump card as much with him. I understand the production is there, but is he the most athletic interior defensive lineman you watch? The most flexible, the most powerful? It seems like he's got a combination of quality-ish traits as a pass rusher, but we haven't seen him play the run for 2 different stops now, and he just wasn't even just on the field all the time. So we'll see how it plays out for the Chiefs. I think there's an upside there, and I think Joe Colin saw something he likes, or he wouldn't be the pick here. The Chiefs scouting department saw something they like, or he wouldn't have been the pick where they took him. It's just a matter of how do you get him from where he is now as a rotational player to a guy that can be more consistently impactful and, replace what Tershawn Wharton developed into over 4 years.
There's a lot of, they tout his character. Like there's a lot of people that tout the high character of Omar Norman-Lott. So this is a guy that has, that has some high character as well. Right. So that is something that he's being touted for, when you're looking at, when you're looking at some people that, are talking about like the background and some of those kind of things for Omar Norman-Lott. So there's that piece of it too. Taking him in for a top 30, it's very obvious. Like the Chiefs, the Chiefs have done extensive work on him. They've done an extensive amount of work on him. He's one of the few guys that that we have visibility on for the 30 visits. Like you don't get the full reveal. There's always 6 or 7 that you never hear about. Omar Norman-Lott is one of those guys that you hear about, and I do think it is. It's speaking to a craving and a desire to make sure that they can continue to keep their sub rush dynamic, and they feel like what they had with Tershawn Wharton is something that they desperately need to continue to maintain the way that they operate this defense. And if you are going to be, looking from that perspective, Omar Norman-Lott makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, Omar Norman-Lott, he looks to fill the shoes. And if you want to see the upside, say, hey, Tershawn Wharton, you saw his progress over the time with the Chiefs. He got better and better year over year and stuff like that. So maybe you bank on that kind of development for Norman-Lott. It's tricky when you're dealing with a 5th-year guy who I think still needs some work. That's where I start to have my hesitations about older players, is when I think that they aren't ready to hit the ground running. I guess we haven't broken this down. Omar Norman-Lott, 6'2", 291 pounds, so a little bit undersized. Clearly and we're talking about it, he hasn't played on the field for the run. He's clearly a 3-tech, but almost 34-inch long arms, so very long arms. He kind of has the prototypical build that people like out of 3 techniques moving forward. We will see how he develops. I think he is an upside swing, a little bit older of a player, but an upside swing for an interior pass rusher that maybe provides some juice that the Chiefs didn't have before. And we'll see what they do. They got another pick coming up here in just a second, because I think they're almost back on the clock.
They are on the clock.
They are. I'll also tell you, 65 overall, Toledo defensive tackle Darius Alexander goes to the Giants. He
did, and Andrew Makuba went to the Eagles right after. So that's 2 picks that I would have loved, there. But we'll see what they do. If the Chiefs have a chance here at 66 to come back from this.
With the Chiefs on the clock, real quick, what does a 3-tech pass rusher who's not named Chris Jones do in 2025?
What Tershawn Wharton did in 2024?
Yeah. I think that's the response. And this is a potential 3-tech replacement type player for Chris Jones in 2026 if you are moving on from him when you have more contractual flexibility to do so.
Well, if he's Chris Jones, it's a good pick.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he'll ever get to that point. But this is like, hey, look, you're investing in the defensive line. You're continuing to invest in that defensive line.